The only way to preserve our freedoms and hold on to our humanity is to vote for Joe Biden for president. We don't have a choice.
That's where you're wrong. We do have a choice. A lot of us are voting for Trump. That's the other choice. So stop trying to gaslight us into believing that we don't have a choice.
This is not a threat. This is a reality.
So if you show up to Trump's trial and you try to give an anti-Trump message, nobody wants to listen.
I don't mean to scare you. No, wait, maybe I do mean to scare you.
I think Robert De Niro has really mistaken himself for being like one of the characters in his movies and thinks he's gonna get John Gotti type respect. And that's just not the way any of us see him.
Forget about it.
You're an actor. You've done a lot of really good movies. Some would say kind of the same movie over and over, or you at least playing the same character over and over, but that's beside the point. My point that I'm making right now is you can't expect us as regular people to give you Hollywood respect. This isn't a movie premiere. This isn't a red carpet. And we don't see you as this icon telling us the way that we're supposed to think and vote. It's just not going to work out because I know I can speak clearly for myself. I've never thought to myself when making a big decision, what would Robert De Niro do right now? And I don't think the average American does. So when you come out trying to play this role during a speech that you're doing that clearly has been requested by the Biden campaign, I don't know why you think that we would listen to you.
That does not work, and we all know that.
I don't know why you would think that we would give that any particular weight. It's clear that this is a paid actor giving a pretty terrible performance in trying to scare us.
He will never leave. You know that. He will never leave.
Into voting the way that you vote or voting the way that you think we should vote.
But no one takes him or took him really seriously. They take him seriously now, of course.
I think that if you transpose those, that would be where we're at with you, Mr. De Niro. I think that there was a point where we did take you seriously, and now we just don't.
Anyway, we make room for clowns, to each his own.
So, govern yourself accordingly. Maybe keep your opinions to yourself. Maybe when you're saying that Trump was
a two-bit playboy lying his way into the tabloids, pretending to be a spokesperson for himself.
Some of us would call that acting, and then we would say you're both just a couple of actors playing different roles. I mean, it really sounds a little bit like the pot calling the kettle black. Does Biden have no advisors right now? Because I don't know why Robert De Niro would seem like a good play. What's up, everybody? Ty Rivera here, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. Before we get started, I'm just going to ask that you like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to comment just to help me on the algorithm but don't know what to comment, just put a knife, because you know some ridiculous lefties are going to come for my neck. And I really do not care if people decide to come for my neck on this one, because I am 100% a Donald Trump supporter. At the same time, I will admit that there are situations where he doesn't handle them the best. And when it comes to Joe Biden, this is a situation where it's so tone deaf that he would think that having Robert De Niro come out and speak for him would be a good play. I don't know if anybody's paying attention to what's going on online right now, but a lot of people are mass unfollowing celebrities because they don't feel like they can relate with celebrities, or more importantly, celebrities can relate with them. And that's similar to where a Robert De Niro would fall in, except for times 1,000. Robert De Niro is an 80-year-old man. Obviously, he's had a great career. He's been in some really good movies, but on that level, when was the last time that Robert De Niro had a movie that we were all clamoring to see? The last time I remember Robert De Niro doing anything that was considered big was
Meet the Fockers.
And I just think that this is another tone-deaf move from the Biden administration in not acknowledging that kids these days, if you're trying to appeal to them, are not worried about what an 80-year-old actor is trying to tell them. And then when you go to the people that are closer to Robert De Niro's age, those people usually have their minds made up and are already being scared to hell by CNN or Fox News, depending on who they go with. And when you send this actor out to give this message, and part of the message is
Donald Trump wants to destroy not only the city, but the country, and eventually he could destroy the world.
That's not going to work this time around because we've already experienced a Trump presidency. And even if you really hated Donald Trump, he didn't ruin the country. Some people would try to argue different, but that's just not the fact of the matter. And we get that you're going to do a lot of complaining. And when I say you, I mean the very liberal left, and the far left is going to do a lot of complaining. But one thing that's really got Biden and his people in what they call freak out mode, because there were reports on the news yesterday that said that there were people that were close to the Biden camp that were saying that they were in freak out mode because they know that it's not going well. And then Robert De Niro comes out to give his message, and it makes it look like they are genuinely in freak out mode. There's a point where Robert De Niro is saying that
he doesn't belong in my city. I don't know where he belongs, but he certainly doesn't belong here.
And if you remember 90s and early 2000s, you know that Donald Trump was synonymous with New York, almost as much as probably a Robert De Niro would be. There was a point where he mentioned,
You think Trump ever threw a punch himself or took one?
when in the last 40 years has Robert De Niro ever taken or given a punch outside of on screen? So how does that even come into play would be what I'd want to know. And do we think that Trump has never taken or given a punch? Because if I were to guess at what Trump was like in his personal life when he was a young kid, I would imagine he was a douchebag. And usually douchebags not only take but give punches. I don't know that that's ever happened, but I would imagine at some point in Trump's life he's either taken or given a punch or both. And then he brought up,
He got the most religious evangelicals to applaud a sinner who bragged about assault.
which if you know anything about Robert De Niro's history, his company got sued by a former employee, and the female employee had accused Robert De Niro of unwanted physical contact, as well as treating her in a way, and of course I'm paraphrasing, but treating her in a way that was stereotypical to her sex. So she felt like she was being discriminated against. She ended up being awarded $1.2 million. Robert De Niro himself wasn't found guilty of anything, but his company was, and that's why she got awarded the money. But the basis of that was an accusation of, like I said, unwanted physical contact. So Robert De Niro doesn't come in with clean hands himself, but all of a sudden we're supposed to take him as the voice of morality. And one thing that people love to talk about is Trump and the grabber by the statement. But if you paid attention to that statement, he said they let you, which they let you denotes consent. Because I know that I haven't necessarily told a lot of people yes in so many words when I was going to let them engage in any kind of physical contact with me, but I know I definitely have consented to almost all of it. There have been a few instances where somebody has just grabbed me out of nowhere or touched me in a way that I didn't want to be touched without my permission, even nonverbal, but that has been few and far between. But even when I've been allowing it, it's just not customary for me to outwardly say, yes, you can touch me. It's usually implied. Like when somebody moves in for a kiss, I don't say, yes, you can kiss me right before they kiss me. I just let them move in. I let them. So as they move in, I allow them to get closer to me, and then at a point I move into, and then that gives the consent right there. So I'm kind of tired of people playing with phrasing because it's not working out. And if you notice, a lot of what Trump is saying this time around is hitting with blacks and Latinos because as people of color, we have noticed that our communities are being negatively affected by what's going on on with the Biden administration. When it comes to kids at the borders, I perform in El Paso, Texas. About once a year is what I'll perform in El Paso, Texas. And the last time I was in El Paso, I was talking to one of the nurses that was working in one of the hotels because they used to put us in a Best Western that was right next to the club. And that Best Western was shut down this time because it was being used to house the kids of the immigrants that were coming over. It was being used as a housing facility. So the parents are still being separated for the kids. Like I said, that was like a year ago. The parents are still being separated for the kids. And who knows what's happening to those kids in those hotels. But I know that I was talking to a nurse. She was black and she was saying the same thing. She was like, yeah, things aren't any better right now. I have friends that are border patrol agents. They talk about how things haven't gotten any better for them. Technically, they've gotten worse under Biden because their hours were being cut. So when you're talking to people that are from these communities, marginalized communities as they like to call them, and you're trying to scare us into not voting for somebody, but perception is reality. So you can give me all the reasons in the world why things were worse under Trump or why things don't seem as good now that Biden is in office. But all I know is that I was paying a lot less for my groceries when Trump was in office. I know it seemed like people in general had much more expendable income and seemed to be in better places when Trump was in office. I know that gas was less expensive when Trump was in office. So why is it all of these things seem to be lining up with when Trump was in office, yet these big celebrities want to keep telling us about how much better things are going to be with Biden in the second term? I mean, shouldn't he have already shown us that in the first term? And why is it the only people that really seem to feel like this are celebrities that have millions and millions of dollars? Is Biden only speaking and acting in sound waves the ultra rich can hear in? Because for the average person, things don't really seem to be going well under Biden. And I'm not going to go into the politics of it, but wasn't there a connection between Hunter Biden and the Ukraine? Wasn't there also some suspected wrongdoing between Biden himself and the Ukraine? Why is it none of these things get brought up and we're just supposed to believe that Trump is a boogeyman? Maybe Trump has turned out to be less of a boogeyman than Biden would be. Wasn't there just some kind of confirmation about Biden's daughter and a journal she had written in where she didn't think that her father's behavior with her when she was a child was appropriate? Did that not happen? Because I thought it did. So when we've got Biden sniffing kids and then we've got Trump that maybe every once in a while sounds like an asshole, and I can admit that. Every once in a while, Trump does sound like an asshole. But nobody on the left will really acknowledge the fact that Biden may have done some wrong during his life or his career. You all want us to accept that Biden is this saint, and you want to roll out every celebrity you can possibly roll out to tell us how much of a saint that Biden is and how great he is and how great Kamala is. But I haven't noticed Kamala do anything except for show up on the Drew Barrymore show, where Drew Barrymore told her that she wanted her to be the suck it for the country, because that's what mamala means in Spanish. If anybody doesn't know, mamala means suck it. She's been sucking it the whole time because she doesn't do anything. And typically a vice president doesn't do a lot. But for you all to really be pushing Kamala on us like she's some sort of savior or even a spokesperson for the black community. But her record when she was in San Francisco wasn't necessarily one for supporting black people. And technically, if you really get into it, there were a lot of cases where she suppressed evidence or people didn't feel like they got a fair shake when Kamala was doing her business in San Francisco. But for some reason, we're all supposed to ignore that. I saw Fat Joe on the Breakfast Club not too long ago saying that that's the way all defense attorneys start out usually, because Kamala was a DA, and he was saying that most defense attorneys start out as DAs and that's how they learn to work the system. But Kamala really didn't do people of color a lot of favors when she was in San Francisco, but now she's supposed to be the great savior for people of color. And a lot of us are not buying, because it's usually rich white people that are telling us that this is what it is.
I might not be in the mood to deal with white shenanigans that day. That's all I'm saying.
There was also a point where Robert De Niro was getting heckled by cars.
Do we want him running this country and saying, I'm not leaving, I'm dictator for life? I hope this new ad campaign.
He was also getting heckled by a man that was asking him about the officers that he showed up with and saying that
These guys are the true heroes. They stood and put their lives on the line for these lowlives, for Trump.
They lied under oath.
They lied under oath.
Right.
Who lied under oath? What are you telling me?
Those two traitors behind you.
Excuse me?
Those two traitors behind you.
he was like,
They lied under oath?
That's right.
What are you saying?
They're traitors.
They're traitors. I don't even know how to deal with you, my friend. I don't even know how to deal with you.
he went into grandpa mode. I don't even know how to deal with you. I don't even know how to deal with you. Okay, even if Robert De Niro completely believes that the officers behind him did not lie under oath, if he's going to come out and be pushing the January 6th thing so heavy, shouldn't he have been prepared to respond to that if somebody said that or anything like that? Because these allegations are not new. If you're really paying attention enough to politics, that you're telling us the way that we're supposed to vote and what it is we're supposed to be afraid of. Should you not have been prepared to answer a question like that? Or were you just thinking that because you're Robert De Niro, the famous actor, and never in your life does anybody question you for probably at least the last 40 or 50 years, that this was going to apply in this situation? Because I hate to inform you, Mr. De Niro, but in politics, when you're dealing with people that feel so passionately about a particular candidate as the MAGA camp does, you better be prepared to be treated like anybody else and have your feet held to the same flames that anybody else would have theirs held to if they were talking about this. It's just the way it works. There were points where he was getting flustered during his prepared speech that he had written like a typical actor. And every once in a while, he tried to be a little bit off the cuff.
A clown.
There was a point where you could tell that he just gave up on what he was saying and then moved on to the next thing because he realized that.
But we vowed we would not allow terrorists. I owe this city a lot.
Maybe trying to refer to Donald Trump as a terrorist wasn't going to be the best idea, because a lot of us would be like, yeah, he hasn't been a terrorist. And then when he brings up January 6th.
January 6th rallied an angry mob to threaten democracy, leaving death and destruction in its wake.
A lot of us saw the January 6th speech that he gave, and I really didn't notice him telling people to storm the Capitol. What he said was to march peacefully and patriotically, I believe was the quote from what he said, and I covered that back then. So I don't know why now this is being brought up again in a way that's supposed to sway us. I get it if people want to continuously bring it up just because they want to bring it up, but what you have to understand is the people you're trying to sway are not going to be swayed by it, because for us it really doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense that we're supposed to believe that after he didn't ruin the entire world the first time, this time is what he's waiting until so that he can ruin the entire world for everybody.
If Trump returns to the White House, you can kiss these freedoms goodbye that we all take for granted.
Just stop with the scare tactics and actually tell us good things that Biden does has done, and plans to do. Why don't you try that for a strategy instead of trying to scare us into not going with the other guy? Instead of telling us what the other person has or hasn't done, why don't you maybe tell us what your guy plans to do, what he plans to change, how he plans to work moving forward? Because I can tell you, the way that he's doing things now, we are not happy with. If you notice, people are being a lot more vocal about supporting Trump this time because they realize that there's not really a consequence, and a lot of other people are feeling the same way. So long story short, I don't think that this is going to be the win for the Biden campaign they thought it was going to be, and I don't think that the strategies that they're pulling are going to be effective because people are tired of celebrities trying to tell them what they're supposed to think and the way that they're supposed to vote. And Robert De Niro isn't relevant enough at this point in time to make that difference or to make anybody feel any particular way. And I don't even know anybody that really thinks of him as the spokesperson for New York.
I love this city. I don't want to destroy it.
Anyway, let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. As always, this has been Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world.
They bought into his bullshit.